Hello, my name is Dave Risick, and I'll be talking to you briefly about the risk assessment that we've done to support the development of town plans for Lakatoro. Firstly, we need to think about why we need a town plan for Lakatoro. Having a town plan that is really climate risk friendly allows the development of the town to be done in a way that is sensitive to conditions, but also allows the future of the Lakatoro community to be secured and to support them to have an economy that can grow into the future. So in undertaking this climate risk assessment, we looked at a number of different hazards. Those included hazards from cyclones, wind, cyclone inundations, so things such as storm surge. We looked at earthquake and volcano risk, and we also considered things such as tsunami, importantly landslide with the very steep hills in the area, and also flooding with the significant rainfall that occurs at time. So just a brief overview, what we did was collect as much information as we possibly could. I'm not going to talk to you about all of it in this particular presentation, but you can see here this is information around cyclonic wind. On the left-hand side is the track from Cyclone Pam in 2015, which had winds of up to 320 kilometers an hour. And we were able to look at this and think about what that wind risk might mean to the existing buildings and development in Lakatoro, and consider that in terms of a high and medium risk where we'll be able to map that out. We also looked at other aspects related to cyclones, such as storm surge inundation. So there we saw where the waves would move to and where the low-lying areas of the area of the town are placed, and where people and assets are placed in potentially harm's way once storm surge inundation starts to occur. Particularly as we look forward into the future, with sea level rise increasing, the area that is inundated by storm surge becomes greater. And so we were able to collect that information and put it together for this risk assessment. We also looked at risks associated with earthquakes. And of course, there's quite a lot of earthquake activity in the Pacific Rim. And this can result in quite large influences on the Lakatoro area, such as tsunami. And we did look at tsunami. Now, these tsunamis are a fairly rare event, so they have a low likelihood of occurring, but when they do occur, they can be very substantial. And obviously, again, with sea level rise occurring, tsunamis can have a slightly greater area over the land when they occur into the future. So we were able to map the areas associated with tsunamis, and recognizing that this is based on global data, the best available at the time. There is new information becoming available, and we do highly recommend that a better tsunami mapping is done now that the LiDAR data is being collected. So what we did, we put together all the different maps of risk into the future. So we did look at this in 2090, and for example, on the left-hand graph, you can see where tidal and coastal inundation will be in the Lakatoro area. In the middle, we have what the future might look like in terms of land-based flooding for the Lakatoro area. And on the right-hand side, we have slope analysis. So this is really looking at where there's a greater likelihood of slope destability and landslides occurring, with the darker colors being those areas where there's higher likelihood of land slippage occurring and where you wouldn't want to necessarily develop. So this information allows us to start to think about what a risk-informed urban plan might require, and where there might be growth areas to look at. But it's very difficult to make a decision about one particular hazard in its own right, because you might make a very good decision about avoiding, for example, storm surge, tidal inundation, but that might put you into harm's way from landslide or from flooding. And so it's very important that we actually map all these different hazards together, and think about where those safe areas might be from a multi-hazard perspective into the future. And so if you're looking at the map on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there's a whole lot of different colors, and those obviously, as you've seen from the previous maps, relate to areas which are potentially hazardous, and we're then able to look at the lighter colored areas and think about that those might be places we could develop into the future as the Lakatoro town grows. And we've been able to pass this information on to our town planning component of the team, and they have been able to identify where you might have growth into the future, and what a future safe town might be. Of course, in terms of managing the risk, it's really important that we understood the consequences of some of these risks to various assets. And so we've had done a lot of work engaging with the local community, both in the township but also at a government scale, to try and understand what those consequences of some hazards on critical areas might be. So important things for a town like Lakatoro when you're looking at a growth into the future are the airport. Importantly for the health of the community and more broadly is the hospital. And then that linkage to the broader other islands of Vanuatu, which is so important, is gained through the wharf. And so we were able to look at those critical areas and see where they are in risk, and then make recommendations to our town planners around things that might need to be thought about into the future. And you'll hear about this in a separate video. So I will leave it there, and thank you very much. Thank you to all the people who've contributed to this work.